I am very happy to say once again by Congressman Frank Wolf from the 10th District of the great state of Virginia here on the Steve Malzberg Show. Hey, Congressman, how are you, sir?
I'm very good. I'm very good, thank you.
Good. Well, thank you for joining us. It's been a while, but I just wanted to talk to you in light of what we have heard about Benghazi, and in an effort to keep Benghazi out there as much as possible. We heard from former U.S. Attorney Joe diGenova, who is the legal representative for one of the Benghazi witnesses who testified, Mark Thompson, a so-called whistleblower, who told WMAL radio last week that he was in. He knows why. He knows the circumstances of the Benghazi attack, and that it involved surface-to-air missiles, a couple of hundred of them anyway. I mean, have you heard this independently of Mr. diGenova? And if not, do you believe him? Where are we with this?
Well, that's a good question. I have many questions. That's why I have put the resolution in to have a select committee to answer some of these questions. I have heard that. I've also heard other weapons were there, secondhand, not firsthand like he had, but secondhand. We've been in touch with people who are on the ground who have contacted my office through intermediaries. They have told us stories like that, but I cannot personally say that I know that to be a fact. Other stories that we've been told is that when the attack took place on the annex, that the consulate called the annex, the CIA annex, and said, "Help us," and they were told to stand down. They got another call, and they were told to stand down, and they got a call the third time, and Ty Woods and them, who were former Navy SEALs, basically went. They went in spite of the order, and there was a feeling that maybe had they gone the first time, that Ambassador Stevens and the other gentleman would not have been killed. There's also a story, and I know it now to be true, that we were told that when the wounded were there and were being taken out, they were not taken out on an American aircraft. I mean, that's incredible. Here you have wounded American fighters, if you will, taken out on maybe even a commandeered Libyan plane.
Wow.
Also, we would now know to be a fact that the CIA employees of 25 or 30 who were on the tarmac at the airport in Benghazi, when they were waiting and waiting and waiting, this is not to be rescued, if you will, during the fighting, but afterward, it was not an American plane that took them out. It was a Libyan plane that took them out. We also have heard other things like that. So there are so many questions. So what Joe diGenova said sounds logical, but since I don't know firsthand, like I did the other things, I think we have to find out. We need a public hearing. We need to subpoena the witnesses. I think the two witnesses who would probably be able to answer this under oath would be John Brennan, who's head of the CIA, and David Petraeus, who's the former head of the CIA. There's so much that we don't know. And lastly, when the Congress comes back into session on September 9th, 2 days later, it'll be the one-year anniversary.
Congressman, I got to tell you, but we should point out that diGenova said that those 400 surface-to-air missiles were intended for Syrian rebels, and that they were stolen by, as he put it, some very ugly people, and that people are walking around Washington holding their breath. First of all, that the embassy closings were related to the missiles that were stolen, because they felt that the attack would be that one of these missiles would be fired at one or more of the embassies, and number two, naturally, God forbid, that some of these missiles could be used to take down a passenger jet.
Well, Joe diGenova was the U.S. Attorney here in the District of Columbia, a very, very credible person. And if he says that, I think he probably would be operating on pretty solid information. The concern is that any weapons, whatever they are, that would later go into Syria would go into the hands of jihadis. I mean, if you looked at the Washington Post yesterday, some of the groups that are now active in Syria are scary. In February this year, my chief of staff and myself, we went to Lebanon on the border down in the Bekaa Valley, and we had people from Syria come out to meet us. The stories that they told us of jihadis, people from Afghanistan, people from Yemen, people from Chechnya and places, is very scary. And the very thought that some of those weapons could go into those hands. And so who knows? And if Joe diGenova said that this person told him, then, I would not question that. I think we have to find out.
We're talking to Congressman Frank Wolf here on the Steve Malzberg Show. You have been, in my view, heroic in trying to keep this alive, in calling for a select committee. Why on earth does John Boehner not want to do this? I mean, he doesn't want to, he's going to capitulate on immigration reform. He doesn't want to rock the boat on health care. He doesn't want to risk a government shutdown. So we're going to let Obamacare hit us. He doesn't want to go with a select committee on this. I don't know what's going on anymore.
Well, I can't answer those questions. We're gonna continue to push. We just picked a new co-sponsor up today. I think we're at 168. So 6 more have gone on over since the recess started. I would urge citizens, if they're listening, to ask their congressman, are you on the resolution? It's HRES 36. It will be bipartisan. I mean, I think you have to have both parties involved. Both parties ought to be able to call witnesses. Both parties should be able to subpoena witnesses, because a subpoena is not an unfriendly act. It's a friendly act. If you're a federal employee and you're afraid to come forward, by being subpoenaed, you are sort of protected. We have heard the story that CIA employees are asked to sign again non-disclosure agreements, so they won't disclose what went on. That's why you need to subpoena them all, friendly subpoena, and bring them up before the hearing publicly. Because if it's all done in private, closed-door sessions, the American people will never find out what happened. And so I think everyone ought to ask their congressman, are you on HRES 36? Otherwise, I'm going to make a prediction. We're never going to know what happened. And, you know, the contrast is amazing. I'll kind of end on this. We lost 4 American lives. There's a guy named Ubin, who was a security officer for the State Department, who still had a Bethesda wall to read 11 months later. We have another Navy SEAL who was severely wounded. These men are heroes. They are heroes of what they've done. But if you contrast their pain and suffering and death, and the families of the 4 that were killed want to know what happened, the contrast is Hillary Clinton is now making several $100,000 a speech. General Petraeus is working up in New York and Wall Street. Jack Lew, who was chief of staff, is now the Secretary of Treasury. Susan Rice, who was at the UN, who testified on 5 different occasions that it was this so-called video, is now the National Security Advisor. And so if you look at the contrast, and Leon Panetta signed a book deal for $3 million.
Oh, boy.
It is crazy. So we have to have bipartisan public hearings, everything on the record, and bring people forward so we can find out what happened.
One more. You mentioned Hillary Clinton, and that's not one of the people you said that needs to testify along with Brennan and General Petraeus. Would you be in favor of hearing from Hillary again?
I would, but I think the 2 most important ones, I think there can be too much time spent on this whole, the talking points in the memo. Who changed the memo? I mean, I think we know what happened. It was a political campaign, and, you know, who knows what happened. But
wouldn't Hillary also, sir, know everything that happened?
She may, but she was out sick. But sure, there are many others. You would also want to call everyone who was on the ground during the attack ought to be called. Everyone ought to be subpoenaed. To date, that has not happened. And anyone who has been talked to, there was just a handful, have all been done in closed sessions. So the point is, the 2 people who were driving this was John Brennan, who was in the White House, who was the president's top national security guy, and also General Petraeus, who was head of the CIA. I think, but there are many others who should be called, but I think they are the 2. I mean, the question is, why did we not send a plane to rescue them? If you remember, General Carter Ham, the general, who was head of AFRICOM, testified in closed-door session, and 2 weeks later went out to Aspen at an event where they were charging $1,200 a ticket to tell what went on.
Right, yeah.
He should be called up publicly. And there's some other things. He said he didn't send the rescue team in because he thought the attack on the consulate was almost over, and he probably had a hostage situation. Well, the hostage situation in Iran went on for a year. So the attack on the annex hadn't even taken place yet, and he knew there was an annex. So why didn't they send the team in? there are so many.
Yeah,
questions.
the whole thing is just sickening. And listen, again, thank you on behalf of all of us who do care about this and want to see it, want to see answers for the grieving parents, that poor mother who goes on the shows from time to time.
Yeah,
And
Gene Smith.
yeah, I mean, these people need answers. We all need answers. I thank you, Congressman, very much.
Thanks, sir.
Take
Bye now.
care, Congressman.
Bye.